In this video, I'm going to tell you about why people play the war games that they play, and maybe why they shouldn't. If you've been paying attention to tabletop wargaming and the community around it for some time, you will know the truth to this kind of old meme that's been going around for a while. And what are two things that wargamers hate? One is change, and the other thing is the way that things are right now. You hear a lot of discussion online from people who don't like this part of this game and they don't like this part of that game and all that kind of stuff. But very frequently, the people who are playing the games that they're playing and are maybe angry about those things, if you ask them, well then, why do you play that game? In many situations, they wouldn't be able to give you a really super good answer. Now, as it turns out, there are actually a whole bunch of different answers as to why people play the war games that they play, but sometimes you don't, as a person who is in the situation, recognize that issue, and sometimes it's maybe an issue that you think that you can overcome and things like that, or maybe it's a combination of things. And sometimes it's something that you just have to decide, hey, this is the way it's going to be, and other times you may decide, maybe I should look at a different game, or I should think about the game that I'm playing currently differently. There's a lot of different reasons. I'm going to try to pick on a bunch of them so that maybe you can go through the problems that you might be having with the game that you think that you enjoy, or maybe actually do enjoy, but there's parts of it you don't enjoy, and make some decisions to make your hobby a little bit more fun and a little bit less stressful. One of the big things that causes people to play games is popularity. If this game is quite popular, then you are more likely to play it because you would enjoy playing games with other people, and the more people that are out there playing your game, the more likely you are to find games to play. So when a game is unpopular, it is a little bit more difficult, obviously, for you to find opponents. Now, there are more and more games out there that are solo play and co-op play, and there are plenty of folks out there who don't play with just randos at the game shop. They play just with their specific friends, and they kind of work out their ecosystem of what games that they play kind of by themselves. Maybe they have kind of a cycle they go through, or they just focus on one, or they focus on one for a long time and then drop that and go to something else. It all depends on the specific group. But for people, when a game is popular in a local area, and this is very interesting too, just because there's the most popular games out there, Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, stuff like that, there are parts of the world that's not the most popular game. I'm talking sometimes at a city scale. You will find places that sometimes this game is the most popular, and they're like, yeah, we don't really play those big popular games. We like this game, and that's the one that plays at this shop, or that shop, or all the shops in town, depending on how big the town is. There's a lot of kind of pockets of different popularity, so it's not just this is the most popular game in the world, therefore it's the one you play. Very frequently it has to do with what's near you. But there are plenty of people out there that don't care about the popularity of the game. They're more interested in other stuff. Something that's a big deal for a lot of people is the lore, the story. Some would call it the fluff. I'm not necessarily a big lore fan. I like to read, novels. I like to read books, but I have this kind of disconnect very frequently between what happened in this cool novel that I like to read and what's going on in this game over here. And I kind of like to have my own lore, my own story. I don't like to be told, well, that's the way that these guys are supposed to be painted, or that's the way that these guys are supposed to be played. I like to make up my own stuff. So for me, the lore is not a big deal. But for a lot of people, a lot of people, the lore is what draws them and keeps them in the game. They don't care about pretty much anything else except whether they're playing with Space Marines, or whether they're playing with Stormcast, or whatever the thing is. Lore is super important to a lot of people, and they will overlook problems or things that they don't like, or aspects of the game, because the story is the most important thing to them. If that is the case, then you basically kind of are attached to that particular property. You can't really decide, you can. There's things you can do. You can switch different rule systems, which I'll get to in a second. But the lore, if that's the most important thing to you, then no matter what they do to the rules, from revision to revision to addition, you're going to be kind of stuck there. And if you're cool with that, that's great. Now, there's also the rules, specifically the rules. For me, that's a super important thing. Not so much the lore, but the rules are very important. If a rule set does not bring me joy, if there's parts of it that I don't like, if I think this feels kludgy, or it's too much, or not enough, or this just doesn't make sense, it ruins the flavor of what this faction is doing because they're supposed to be like this, but then this is the way it actually happens in the rules or something like that, or whatever. Rules are very important. To me, rules matter, and you may be the same way as well. I will play a game because I like the rules a lot, and I will change the lore in my own kind of headcanon. I will decide to use different models and stuff like that, which I'm going to mention next. But rules to me specifically are very important, and they might be to you. There are folks out there that, again, they're only interested in the lore, they're interested in the models, and the rules don't matter. They will complain about those rules very frequently on the internet, but sometimes they don't. It depends on the person. But very strongly, rules matter, specifically to me, and they may as well to you. Now, there are things that you can do out there, obviously. If you love the lore and you love the models, but you don't love the rules, you can always change the rules. That's one of the big benefits to tabletop gaming. You can either use the rules as a jumping off point and tweak things, or just grab a completely different rule set out there. There's plenty of them out there. Here's a good example. One-page rules. They are designed so that if you've already got, let's say, 40K, Age of Sigmar, etc. type models, it's very easy for you to take those models and the lore, if you're also into that kind of thing, and drop them right into that rule set, and you will get a game that you might enjoy more if that's what you're into. There might be some other, system out there that you also want to move your models to, or your lore to, or whatever. Everything is interchangeable in tabletop gaming, and that's, I think, an important thing to look at. So if the rules aren't fun for you, then definitely look for a different system. But if the rules don't really matter, well, then maybe it's the next thing. Probably lastly, there's the models. There are plenty of folks out there who are just all about the specific models. Very frequently, they may not even play the game that the models are for. Lord knows I have purchased models before for games that I've barely even heard of, but it's because I want to use them in this other thing over here. Models are super important, but sticking to a very specific game just because of the models can be a little troublesome. Now, you can use those models, obviously, in any game that you want, which is another awesome thing about tabletop wargaming. I like to use Age of Sigmar models in Warcry quite a bit. You have Warcry models that you can use, but you can also use Age of Sigmar ones. I'm not breaking any rules or changing anything here. This is, kind of standard. But I have, as of this point, still not built and painted an actual Warcry warband. They've all been Age of Sigmar models that I've brought into my Warcry stuff. And it's just my preference, because I don't want to play Age of Sigmar because it's a size of game that is too big for me, and the rules are not to my liking necessarily. The lore, it can take it or leave it. But the models are very cool, and I do really like the rules in Warcry. So for me, taking those models and bringing them into a different game is very cool. I mentioned one-page rules. All the models that you might like from, let's say, a company like Games Workshop, you can bring in there, but you could also bring in stuff that you found from 3D printed stuff, Patreons, My Mini Factory, all those places, and use those in those games. Specifically, again, one-page rules, they have an entire line of STL files that they're making for 3D printers, so you have that option as well. So it's something to think about. And also there's, miniatures agnostic games, which I'm also a big fan of. If you find a miniatures agnostic game that has really cool rule set and you really like that rule set, now you have the chance to bring any of the cool models that you like into that game. You can make up the lore that you want and just kind of go from there. All of these things are important to different people. And so it's kind of important to understand which ones are important to you and then make your decisions about what games you want to play. So the next time that you're unhappy with the game that you've been playing a bunch, actually take the time to think, why is this the game that I am playing? Is it because of the lore? Is it because of the rules? Is it the models? What's keeping me here? Is it a combination of some of those things? At that point, you have to kind of make a decision. Am I going to jump ship to a different line of models? Am I going to jump ship to a different rule set that'll make me happier? Am I just going to ignore the lore and just start making up my own stuff to make me happier about what's going on in the games that I'm playing? All of these things are things that you can do because of the near infinite customization that tabletop wargaming has available to it. You can do whatever you want with your game. And again, if you're going to be playing at a tournament, you have to follow the tournament organizer's rules before you type that into the comments. I get it. But when you are playing with you and your friends, you can do whatever you want. House rules, change things, swap rules out, take rules out, use different models, completely change the story. All of these things are available to you in tabletop wargaming, and it is a good idea to take a look at what's going on in your tabletop wargaming and figure out ways to make you happier. If it would make you happy, and if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like down below, and if you haven't subscribed, you got a chance to do that as well. I'm hoping that this helps you to maybe look at your game and see if it's giving you some stress and try to figure out what you can do to change it so that you don't end up just hammering away on the keyboard at Reddit or at a forum or at a Discord, and that's the only way that you seem to interact with your hobby. You should actually be playing the game and enjoying yourself. That's kind of the key. Thanks for watching.